On my 20th birthday, my parents gave me $10. Just 10. But my grandma's gift? It shattered the entire family and exposed secrets I never saw coming. We were all sitting around the table, pretending it was a happy celebration. My dad reached into his wallet and pulled out a $10 bill. He slid it toward me like it was nothing. My mom added a quick smile and said, "Don't spend it all in one place." I forced a thank you, but inside I felt small, like I wasn't worth more than a crumpled bill. Then it was Wesley's turn. He tore open a box and pulled out a leather jacket, brand new and expensive. His eyes lit up, and my parents clapped and laughed like he was the center of the universe. They fussed over how good it looked on him, while I kept quiet, my $10 tucked under my plate. The air was heavy with unspoken tension. That's when my grandmother, Eleanor, cleared her throat. Everyone turned to her. Her voice was calm but sharp as she said, "I have a gift for you too, Harper. One that will change your life forever." She reached into her bag and brought out a thick envelope. Slowly, she pushed it across the table toward me. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a folded document and a letter in her handwriting. I skimmed the first page, and my heart almost stopped. It was the deed to her lake house in Michigan, the house where I'd spent countless summers with her, the one place I felt free and happy. I looked up, my chest tight, my eyes stinging. Grandma's hand rested on mine. She gave me a steady look and said, "You deserve this." Silence dropped over the table. My mother's fork slipped and hit the plate. My father's face hardened, his jaw locked tight. Wesley's smile vanished, replaced with disbelief and anger. The envelope sat in front of me like a bomb that had just gone off. And deep down, I knew nothing in our family would ever be the same again. Grandma's hand didn't shake when she pushed the envelope toward me. It looked heavy, sealed tight, like it carried something far more serious than a birthday card. The room grew still, and every eye followed it until it stopped in front of me. I stared at it, my fingers hovering, unsure if I should even open it with everyone watching. "Go on, Harper," Grandma said, her voice steady but full of meaning. I tore the seal and pulled out a stack of papers. At first, all I saw was legal print, thick paragraphs and signatures at the bottom. My chest tightened as I flipped through. Then the words jumped out at me, warranty deed. My breath caught. The lake house. Grandma was giving me the lake house in Michigan. That house wasn't just walls and a roof to me. It was summers of swimming until my skin wrinkled, nights chasing fireflies in jars, mornings when Grandma made pancakes and told me stories about her own childhood. I could almost hear the creak of the old dock under my feet and smell the pine trees that circled the water. That place held every piece of happiness I ever clung to. The paper shook in my hands. A letter slipped out from between the documents, written in Grandma's looping script. I didn't even finish reading it before the silence in the room started pressing on me. I looked up, and everything had changed. My mom's smile had vanished. She sat stiff, her face pale and tight like she'd been slapped. My dad's jaw flexed, his lips pressed in a straight, hard line. Across from me, Wesley gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. His jaw clenched so tight, I thought his teeth might crack. No one spoke. The silence wasn't calm. It was sharp, tense, like the air before a storm. My throat felt dry, my hands trembling as I folded the letter back into the envelope. I wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Grandma broke it for me. Her tone was calm, but each word landed with weight. "Harper deserves this. She has been kind to me, loyal to me, and far too often overlooked in this family. I want her to have something that cannot be taken away." Her eyes never left my parents. The message wasn't just for me. It was aimed straight at them. My mom forced a laugh that came out brittle. "Mother, really? This is a bit much. It's a sweet thought, but Harper doesn't need a whole property. She's young. She won't know how to handle something like that." Grandma's head tilted, her lips pressing into a thin line. "It's not a sweet thought, Glenn. It's a decision, one I've made carefully. This house belongs to Harper now." No one moved. The air felt heavy, like the walls themselves were listening. My parents didn't argue further, but the anger in their eyes told me everything. Wesley wouldn't look at me, his jaw still tight. The envelope sat between my hands, warm from my grip. For the first time that night, I realized this wasn't just a gift. It was a line drawn in the sand, one no one in my family could pretend not to see. The days after the birthday dinner felt different. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, but it became too clear to ignore. My parents barely looked at me. When they did, it wasn't with the same warmth I used to search for, even if it was never much. Now it was sharper, colder, like I'd done something to offend them. At breakfast, my mom would talk to Wesley about school or his friends, but she'd skip over me as if I wasn't sitting right there. My dad asked Wesley about his car, his classes, his plans for the weekend, but never once asked me how I was doing. It was like I had turned invisible overnight. Wesley wasn't quiet about how he felt either. He would lean against the counter, smirking, and say things like, "Must be nice, Grandma's golden girl," or, Guess some people get handed everything. His words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Sometimes he'd say it like a joke, but the bitterness was plain. I tried to ignore him, but each jab stuck to me like a thorn. I didn't ask for the lake house. I didn't even know it was coming. Yet, somehow, I had become the enemy in my own home. One afternoon, Grandma called me over to her house. She poured me tea and sat across the table, watching me carefully. "You've noticed the way they're acting, haven't you?" she asked. I nodded. There was no point pretending. She reached over and patted my hand. Her touch was steady, firm. "Listen to me, Harper. They're going to come after that house. They won't be able to stop themselves. Don't trust anyone but yourself." The words made my stomach twist. Part of me wanted to argue, to say my parents wouldn't really go that far. But the truth was already sitting heavy in my chest. I'd seen the look in their eyes when I opened the envelope. It wasn't just shock. It was anger. "I don't understand why it has to be like this," I whispered. "It's just a house." Grandma shook her head. "To you, it's memories. To them, it's money, control, pride. That house isn't just wood and stone, Harper. To them, it's something they believe they deserve. And they'll find a way to convince themselves you don't." I sat there in silence, staring into my cup. I wanted to believe my parents loved me more than property, but the way they had been treating me told another story. Grandma's eyes softened. "You're stronger than you think, and you're not alone in this. I gave it to you for a reason. Don't let them take that away." For the first time since the party, I felt a small sense of relief. Uneasy, yes, but grateful. Grateful that at least one person in my family saw me, believed in me, and was willing to stand beside me when the rest of them turned away. I arrived at the lake house one bright afternoon, hoping for the quiet I usually found there. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and the familiar smell of pine and water drifted in. But the calm I was expecting disappeared the moment I stepped inside. My parents were there, moving from room to room, rifling through drawers and cabinets with an eagerness that made my stomach twist. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice unsteady. They didn't stop. My heart pounded. Something about their behavior felt wrong. These weren't casual visitors. They were searching, as if hunting for something hidden, something that belonged to me. Roger turned slowly, his face calm but cold, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. "This house should have stayed in the family," he said flatly. "Meaning us, not you." His words hit me like a punch, heavy and sharp. I blinked, stunned. I had never heard him speak to me like this. Not so openly, not so clearly. Glenda, standing near the kitchen, added her part without hesitation. "You're too young and irresponsible to handle property," she said, her voice full of annoyance and finality. I could see she meant it, that there was no room for discussion. My hands trembled slightly as I stepped closer. "What are you doing here? Why are you looking through my things?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though panic was rising inside me. The answer was obvious in the way they avoided my eyes, in the way they moved through the rooms with a sense of entitlement. They were not just visiting. They were scheming. The thought struck me suddenly, like a cold splash of water. They wanted to take the lake house away from me. This house had always been my safe place, the one place I could think and breathe and be myself. And now, the people who were supposed to love me were plotting to take it from me. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How could they think I was incapable? I had always cared for the house, kept it in order, and respected its history. I knew every creaking floorboard, every hidden corner, every secret drawer. Yet here they were, dismissing all that, deciding for themselves that I was unfit to keep what was mine. My mind raced. I could see their plan in the way they whispered to each other while pretending nothing was happening, the way their eyes flicked toward me with thinly veiled irritation. They wanted control, and they were willing to betray me to get it. A knot tightened in my chest, but I refused to show fear. I knew I had to stay calm, to think clearly. I would not let them take the house without a fight. I would find a way to protect it, to protect myself from their betrayal. Their words were harsh, their intentions cruel, but my resolve grew stronger with each passing second. I had always loved this place, and I would not let anyone, not even my parents, take it from me. The realization settled in. The people who were supposed to care for me had chosen their own gain over my trust. I felt the sting of betrayal deeply, but it also sparked a determination I had never felt before. I would face them, and I would not back down. I was sitting in my room when the letter came. I had no idea what it could be, but as soon as I opened it, my heart sank. It was from a lawyer, and the words on the page made everything feel unreal. My parents were contesting Eleanor's transfer of the lake house to me. They claimed that Eleanor was not of sound mind when she made the decision. I read it over and over, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the words didn't change. My own parents were trying to take the house away from me, and now they were taking it to court. I felt a wave of shock that left me numb. Then heartbreak followed, heavy and sharp, like someone had pressed their hand against my chest. How could the people who were supposed to love me do this? How could they go so far as to sue me, their own daughter, over something they knew was meant to be mine. I could hardly breathe. The house had always been my safe place, a part of me, and now it was under attack by the people I had trusted the most. I didn't have to think long about what to do next. Eleanor was by my side, calm but firm, as if she had expected. She had already hired a lawyer to defend the transfer, to make sure that the house would remain mine. Seeing her stand up for me, for my right to the lake house, gave me a small spark of hope in the midst of the storm. She didn't let fear take over. She made it clear that she believed in me, and that belief became a shield against the panic threatening to swallow me. But the fight was not just legal. Tensions in the family grew with each passing day. Conversations that used to be normal turned into arguments. Meals together became uncomfortable silences or sharp words. My parents spoke to each other in whispers, plotting and scheming, while I tried to keep my head clear and focus on Eleanor's support. It was as if the house itself felt the tension, the walls pressing in with the weight of betrayal and conflict. Wesley, my sibling, shocked me even more. He took their side. He listened to my parents' words and agreed with them, saying I wasn't ready or capable. His support felt like another betrayal, another layer of hurt added to the wound. I tried to understand why, but it didn't make it hurt any less. The family I had trusted, the people I had believed would protect me, seemed to be torn apart by greed and suspicion. I realized then that this fight would not be easy. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and the strength to stand alone when those you love turn against you. Eleanor and I had to prepare for the long battle ahead, knowing that the people who should have been my protectors were now my opponents. The fight for the lake house had become a fight for my place in the family, for my right to keep something that belonged to me, and for my own sense of security in a world that suddenly felt uncertain and divided. Eleanor looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen before and said she had something important to tell me. I listened closely as she began. She explained why she had chosen me to inherit the lake house. Years ago, my parents had manipulated her into signing over many of her assets. They had slowly drained her savings, leaving her with far less than she deserved. During that time, I was the only person who had ever defended her, the only one who had seen through their lies and stood up for her. Hearing this, a pang of sorrow and guilt ran through me. Their betrayal had gone deeper than I could have imagined. Then Eleanor shared something I wasn't expecting. She admitted that this inheritance decision wasn't just about giving me the lake house. It was part of a plan she had been working on for a long time. She wanted to expose my parents, to show the way they had taken advantage of her. It was her way of standing up to them after all the years of being mistreated and ignored. There was relief in her voice, but also the weight of everything she had carried alone. A mix of emotions ran through me. Sorrow for Eleanor, for the pain my parents had caused her, and for the way they had used her trust. At the same time, determination began to grow inside me. Their greed ran deeper than I had imagined, and it was clear they wouldn't stop at the house. I knew I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for Eleanor too. Eleanor held my hand, a quiet gesture of trust and connection. That moment made me realize our bond went beyond family or inheritance. It was built on loyalty, care, and standing up for what is right. I promised myself to honor her trust and face whatever came next with courage. My parents' betrayal had opened my eyes to the truth, and now I had to act. I would not let their greed win, and I would protect both the lake house and Eleanor's honor. The conversation left me heavy with sorrow, but ready for the fight ahead. It was only the beginning, yet I felt stronger knowing I wasn't alone, and that someone had always believed in me when no one else had. The courtroom was cold and silent when I walked in, and the weight of the moment pressed hard on my chest. I sat across from my parents, unable to believe we had come to this place. They avoided my eyes, but when their lawyer spoke, their words cut deep. They painted me as an ungrateful child, someone too reckless to handle responsibility, someone undeserving of the house. Every sentence stung, not just because it was untrue, but because it was coming from the people who had raised me. I tried to stay calm, though my hands trembled on the table. I wanted to shout back, to tell them they were wrong, but I knew I had to wait, to let the truth come out in its own time. When Eleanor took the stand, the room shifted. Her voice was steady, clear, and full of strength. She looked directly at the judge and explained why she had chosen me. She spoke of my loyalty, of the way I had defended her when no one else would. Every word carried weight, and even though my parents' lawyer tried to interrupt, she refused to be silenced. I felt a swell of pride as I listened, knowing she was standing not only for herself, but for me as well. Then came the moment that changed everything. Roger was questioned, and at first he tried to appear calm, but his mask slipped quickly. His voice rose, his face grew red, and he exploded in anger. His arrogance poured out as he spoke about how the house should have been his, how Eleanor had no right to give it to me. The greed in his words was impossible to ignore. The judge watched him closely, and I could tell that his outburst was working against him. When it was finally over, the judge spoke. The room went quiet, every breath held as the decision was read. The ruling was in my favor. The deed to the lake house was legally mine. Relief washed over me so strongly I almost couldn't move. Across the room, my parents looked shocked, their plan shattered in front of them. Eleanor reached for my hand, giving it a firm squeeze. I knew the battle had been painful and costly, but in that moment, I also knew the truth had won. The house was safe, and so was the bond between Eleanor and me. The trial had ended, and the lake house was finally safe in my name. But even with the relief, I knew something inside me had changed forever. My parents had crossed a line that could never be undone. They had tried to take what was mine, tried to tear me down in front of strangers, and tried to paint me as unworthy. There was no going back to the way things had been. I made a decision that was both painful and freeing. I would cut ties with them. The bond between us had already been broken by their betrayal, and now I had to protect myself from further harm. Eleanor was the one who guided me through the next steps. She told me not to waste my life trying to mend something that was never whole to begin with. Instead, she urged me to look forward and build something new for myself. It was her idea that I should make the lake house my permanent home. At first, the thought of leaving everything else behind scared me. But as I walked through the rooms, touched the walls, and looked out at the water, I realized she was right. This place had always felt like where I truly belonged. Little by little, I began turning the house into more than just a safe escape. I brought in books, clothes, and pieces of my life. I fixed things that had been worn down, cleaned every corner, and made it a reflection of who I was and who I wanted to become. The silence there was not lonely anymore. It was peaceful. It gave me strength. Each day, I felt more certain that I had made the right choice. One afternoon, not long after I had settled in, Wesley showed up at the door. His face was pale, his voice unsteady. He told me our parents' finances were collapsing after all the legal battles and bad decisions, and now he didn't have money to pay for his college tuition. He begged me for help, his eyes full of desperation. For a moment, my heart ached. He was my brother, and a part of me wanted to help. But then I remembered the things he had said to me, how he had mocked me during the hardest time of my life, how he had chosen to side with them when I needed him most. He hadn't believed in me, and worse, he had laughed at me. I shook my head and told him no. I reminded him of those moments, of how cruel he had been when I stood alone. He looked at me with shock, maybe even shame, but I didn't waver. This was not revenge for the sake of cruelty. It was a boundary, a way of finally protecting myself. When Wesley left, I felt a strange calmness. For the first time, I wasn't the one left broken by their choices. I was strong, and the lake house was no longer just a symbol of survival. It was a symbol of freedom. News of the lawsuit spread quickly, and it didn't take long for the community to learn the detail. People who had once admired my parents began to see them in a different light. At grocery stores, on sidewalks, and even at church, whispers followed them. Neighbors spoke quietly about how they had tried to take the lake house from me, how greed had pushed them to turn against their own daughter. The image of respect they had built for so many years cracked and fell apart in just a few months. What had once been pride turned into shame every time they stepped outside. While their reputation was falling apart, money problems grew worse. Court costs, lawyer fees, and poor decisions drained their accounts. The stability they had always flaunted was gone, and debt stacked higher than they could manage. They tried to keep up appearances, but it became harder with each passing day. The house they had lived in for years, the place they once used to show off their success, was suddenly too heavy a burden. Bills went unpaid, loans went unanswered, and at last they had no choice but to sell their home. What had been a symbol of power slipped away from them, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. For me, life moved in the opposite direction. Away from their anger and control, I found space to grow. Living in the lake house gave me freedom I had never known. I filled my days with work that mattered to me, setting goals for the future, and building my own life step by step. Eleanor was by my side the whole time. Her wisdom and steady presence reminded me that I wasn't alone. She encouraged me when I doubted myself and celebrated with me when I made progress. As the months passed, I felt stronger and more certain of who I was. The lake house became more than a home. It was proof that I could stand on my own. While my parents sank into the shadows of their choices, I found light in independence. Their downfall no longer weighed on me. It wasn't my burden to carry. In the end, the community remembered what they had done, and the whispers never fully stopped. Their greed had left scars they couldn't erase. But for me, the future looked different. I was free from their control, free from their schemes, and free to live a life shaped by my own choices. With Eleanor's hand in mine, I faced each new day with hope instead of fear, knowing that I had survived the storm and come out stronger. Eleanor's last birthday came with a quiet stillness in the air. The lake shimmered in the distance, and the house felt warm with the smell of candles and flowers. I sat beside her, ready to celebrate, though I could see the weight of age pressing on her shoulders. She smiled, fragile but bright, and asked me to listen. Her voice carried a softness that made me lean closer, knowing the words she was about to share were important. She told me there was one final secret she had kept until now. The lake house had never been the only thing she planned to leave behind. She had arranged for everything else she owned, her investments, her jewelry, and the heirlooms she had guarded for decades, to come to me. With steady clarity, she explained that she wanted nothing to pass into the hands of my parent. They were completely cut out, not just from the house, but from her entire legacy. Hearing her say this filled me with emotions I could hardly name. It wasn't excitement, though the inheritance was far greater than I had ever expected. It wasn't pride either, though she had chosen me alone to trust. Instead, I felt a bittersweet heaviness in my chest. I knew this gift came not only from her love, but also from the deep wounds my parents had left behind. She was protecting me, but in doing so, she was also making clear just how much betrayal had torn through our family. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The lies, the schemes, the courtroom battles, and the way my parents had turned against me. All of it had carved a distance between us that could never be bridged. What I had gained was not wealth, not property, but truth. I saw them for who they truly were, and I saw myself more clearly than ever. With Eleanor's trust, I had also gained freedom, a life no longer shaped by their control or... As the evening drew on, we went out to the porch of the lake house together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and pink. Eleanor's hand rested in mine, her skin thin but warm. I held it gently, knowing each moment with her was precious. I didn't feel triumph. What I felt was resolve. I had lost my parents' love, or maybe I had only discovered it had never been real to begin with. That loss would always sting, but I carried something stronger now, a promise to myself. The cycle of betrayal that had poisoned so much of my family's history would end with sitting there beside Eleanor, listening to the quiet lap of the water against the shore. I silently vowed that when I built my own family someday, it would be different. It would be built on trust, on loyalty, on love that could not be bought or twisted. The lake house stood as a reminder of pain, but also as a symbol of hope. And with Eleanor's hand in mine, I knew the future was mine to shape.